Hey guys, this is Asteria. I'm hosting today's wonderful chapter of The Wandering Inn, chapter 10.11. We have got probably one of the best chapters so far of volume 10. Definitely one of my personal favorites, and we're going to be spending the next hour or so discussing this. So we'll go ahead and jump right in with general impressions about the chapter. So as I wait for people to kind of ping me to get started, I'll go ahead and share my general impressions. If you've read the chapter, you know why I adore this one. So we finally have circled back to Jakras and Jacana and Relt, and we're seeing how they're handling being, both dual rulers in charge of this kingdom. Now that Relt is back and recovering, we see that he's been leading raids on Medain. And we get a lot of insight into their personalities, their current characters. They've almost flipped, where Jacana is the one that's taken sort of a back seat and trying to do more the diplomacy route, and Relt is all about raiding and revenge and vengeance on Purik, which, who can blame him? So I'm super excited to discuss this chapter. Lots of cool things happened. Mafia Hamster, you're up first.
Yes, I quite enjoyed this chapter. Not personally for me one of the best of the volume, but because I'm still not really sold about the Horns split up again. But the Horns individual are always fun. To see Syria more of her shenanigans. She also given an really showed that she is a wisdom mage, because I think we've been told that it is in long-standing tradition to offer your body for spells, and she casually did that this chapter. So that happened. Whoa, oh my goodness. Otherwise, the rest of the chapter was also enjoyable. To see Pisces seducing unwillingly a princess and not even noticing it. Cove, meaning even Evelyn is sharper than that, because you really didn't know what he did there to that poor princess. And I'm excited about what's happening next, because Horns meeting the King of Destruction is just yes. I can't even tell how much yes this is, and it's gonna be awesome. Pisces finally meeting Feederheb again. That's also, I mean, there is so much. Just yes.
Yeah, the Horns were definitely here this chapter too. We started and ended with them. It was cool to see all the Horns and check in with them, especially Syria and Yvonne, as well as Pisces and Kulth. Bleach Soul, you're up.
I really also like this chapter. I think it's great for Syria to have this kind of inner and this kind of reflection upon her weakness, as what she conceive at her weakness, as she's becoming the weakest of the Horns, and it's nice to have these inner thoughts that she's not allowing the. I mean, she wants the thing to control her even more, but because she doesn't want to feel anything, so she tries to hide it. So I'm really happy that Yvonne gave her the talk about the emotion. It feels like the same thing that Ulvama has said to Erin when Erin refused to acknowledge her feelings. So that's like a nice parallel, at least I think. And of course, I liked also Pisces and Cols's adventures in Jakras, but I really didn't like how Rayelt became so obsessed with vengeance, and how his obsession is gonna destroy. It's gonna start a war that because of the revenge, even though he started a war against Floss to stop the revenge. So maybe I hope he just retire and let Jakena manage the stuff because she's actually helping her people. That's it.
We'll definitely have to see how things work out between those two. I think if they were able to agree on a path forward for the country, they would do much better in splitting the responsibilities and the duties. But they've got sort of wisdom that can temper a lack of experience, but also, Jakena's shown a wonderful ability for diplomatic connections and really sticking by her moral code that maybe Rel sort of kind of let more slip, whereas a younger ruler is going to have that kind of more firmly in place. So I'm really eager to see how they develop, but I would disagree that Relt's necessarily in the wrong for going after Medane. He was tortured, but Medane's not going to just sit back and leave them alone. Better to go after them while they're in the right of it than to sit back and sort of be constantly picked at by this larger power. But we'll have to see how things develop. Sarah Bear, you had some thoughts?
I thought it was a nice chapter that focused on Syria because it's been a while since we focused on her pretty much. I think the last focus on it was like volume 8 or something like that. So it's been great to focus on her with the circuit, how she deal with all the stuff, what changed, what are her regrets, and all of that. Obviously, it's also a pleasure to return to Pisces' slavery arc because it's probably the most important arc of the Orn and Chandra. More important than the sword. Because it was pretty much the main focus of the Orn in Volume 8 in Chandra. Shame we didn't get anything about any code development or POV or really stuff like that. But I hope we'll see that in the next chapter with Floss and all of that. It was a nice 9 out of 10 for me.
Okay, solid judgment. I'm also looking forward to how the Horns go in with Floss and how they handle what's been going on in Hidden Kingdom. It was kind of cool to see the Cross and the Mars show up sort of towards the end of the chapter. We'll have to see how that all plays out. I'm hoping that Pisces and Colt spend a little bit more time with Feddo and Kelt because we know that there's some cool developments going on there, and I'm eager to see how that plays out. Kinea says they felt that the Clavian Earth part was a bit slow, but they were hooked in for all the rest, especially like the Pisces with Jakena part and maybe the part with Syria giving Kevin fame and the discussion with Yvonne after that with everything going through her head. Mystical Pie says the Horns are their favorite characters and they really enjoyed the chapter. They enjoyed finally getting some insight into what Syria is thinking and understanding what all the rulers want with them. So that's a great point, right? There's sort of been this long-standing discussion. I think for me, there are two kind of main plot progression points that have been asked again and again by the readers that we get to see answered in this chapter. One, what's the deal with slavery kind of outside Rishal? We haven't really seen it kind of mentioned in how the Chandra nations seem to deal with it. We got some insight into that this chapter. I mean, we've seen how it's handled in Ream and maybe some other nations where they allow it, but or even encourage it. But you've got a nation like Jakras that doesn't really seem to have slaves or encourage slavery, and now we kind of see where they do in fact have it, but it's not encouraged, and we get some insight into that, which I thought was great. And we also get major insight into Syria's mindset and how she's been handling things. So with that, we will start on the first discussion question, unless there are more general impressions. If there are, ping me. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and start on the first discussion question. Which is thoughts on how Syria is handling her role as team leader and avoiding her emotions, or rather that she's sort of finally confronting them. Part of this question gets into what did you think about how Syria handled Kevin's death, right? Making him play a bigger role in the in-world history than he actually gets credit for right now. So as I was saying earlier, I really, really enjoyed insight into Syria's point of view. We haven't really gotten it. It's been teased for a while. And her being in Clavian Earth really was like kind of the perfect backdrop to get, a peek in her mentality and a little bit of her history as well. So I think it was kind of an assumption that she's using ice mask, right? And her ice to freeze her emotions. We got some insight into how the circlet kind of plays into this ignoring her feelings and dealing with all the mental trauma she's been feeling. And I'm really eager to see more of that play out now that Yvonne has kind of forced her to start to confront some of that. Mafia Hamster, your thoughts?
Yes, I can agree with everything you said. To add to that, I find interesting that she is aware that something is happening. That she is aware that she is muting her emotions, and that this brace circlet is doing something with her, and that she doesn't refuse to. That she wants to win that fight, and like wants to conquer the power of that artifact. And if this is her way to gap to have the gap close to the other two or to the others in her team, I say go for it. Because when she really is able to control that thing on her head, maybe she's gonna level again, and maybe some of her path is will be tied to that bracelet again, like the door is tied to Enuryn's path, to Enuryn's skills. After she leveled, maybe the why do I say bracelet? The crown or the artifact can be tied to her skill evolution and make it her own and not just an object that she uses. And yeah, the way about Kevin, that was, my goodness, it was hard to see, and also in the same way just awesome to immortalize him like this. He really deserves it because he is I think besides Eren and Ryoka, in my opinion, um, one of the most successful Earthers, because he actually he brought something into this world with his bicycles that is not just death and destruction, and I like that. So good for Kevin.
It's amazing the turnaround that we've had on his and some of the other quote unquote useless Earthers, right? I
Hmm.
think all the way back in, I don't even remember what volume at this point when we first met them. And now Syria is working him into early in world events with the Wandering Inn. So, as Dark Time Guai says, you might say she entered Kevin into the Hall of Fame, and she did. At the very least, he's going to be remembered and sung about in ballads for, as she said, maybe the next decade. Kinea says Kevin deserves it. Doesn't everyone remember the time that he made Bellavere piss herself with his mad BMX skills? I think the legend will grow and grow, and rightly so. Bleach Soul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's very important for Syria to acknowledge her emotions, much like Eren, like Ulvama forced Eren to do. Because if she doesn't do that, she will alienate her team. And like Yvonne said that she liked the Syria before this one, the warm Syria, not the one the cold and distant Syria and the jokester Syria. Well, I think she has to deal with it. So, uh, yeah, so for her to keep the team together. As for Kevin, I think it was hilarious how she integrated him in the stories. I don't know. It felt like some like it reminded me a bit of a manga, of Bleach manga, where there is this character who inserts himself everywhere. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious how they how Kevin was inserted there, and he was there with the important stuff. So it's nice to be remembered. I mean, and so Syria also acknowledged the loss of Kevin that affects her a lot. I really like it. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. She seems to have cared more for Kevin than I think anyone speculated or realized. I mean, as she says, he was supposed to be safe. He wasn't an adventurer. He was just doing his bicycles. He should have been kind of like a safe person to potentially, be with or develop a relationship with. And yet being associated with the Wandering Inn kind of pulls you into that realm of danger. And I mean, might have been Syria just like pissed off and finally confronting her emotions, but she doesn't seem to be too happy with Aaron. It'll be interesting to see how that confrontation plays out.
It's not Aaron.
Well, she's not happy with the way that Enuryn.
Yeah, they
is
don't
on
know
the
it's
org.
Aaron, and that's
Yeah.
And somebody said that they are afraid that Neri is gonna bring negative how the rest of the world is gonna see Aaron now, and that they don't like that with the whole body switching impersonation. And that's a good example for why it's fucking scary that a psychopathic lamb is now the face of our sweet innkeeper.
Yeah, fuck
Well,
Neri. Seriously.
we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think even with fake Aaron's proclamation and dancing to the world, sounds like there's maybe still some hard feelings with Syria and how Aaron kind of was calling on people again for a dangerous situation. We'll have to see how that goes, though. Mick says they're really glad that we finally got Syria with proper emotions. They really enjoyed the Kevin stories. They thought it was a good outlet on Purik. I think Yvonne will force her to express her emotions more, or she will try to do willing so now. They think she beats on herself too much, like most of the Horns do. It's amazing how pretty much every single individual Horn thinks that they're not good enough. And yet, they're all trying to keep up with each other. And if they just finally had a heart to heart, maybe they would be able to confront some of these feelings of inferiority. Mafia Hamster, you wanted to talk.
Yeah, I forgot something. I want to know again how Pirate did set that up, because that Syria was dating Kevin was volume. When did it start? In volume 8? Or was it 9? I don't even know when they started dating. But did they know how this? It's just so perfect again that we are having this topic now. It's just again wondering how Pirate knew that. Did did they wanted to get Kevin killed anyway, and so other characters can grow, or that's okay. That's a question, not something really a
I think
comment.
it's a good question for maybe if Pirate
Yeah.
ever does another AMA, getting some insight into how they decide which characters are going to die and which characters aren't, how much planning is put into that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question for an AMA. Otherwise we only can speculate.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's a good comment and a good thought. Because I mean, Kevin was one of those characters that readers really grew to love, and his death is kind of the straw that finally broke the camel's back, so to speak, for Syria and her emotions, right, and all the trauma she's been carrying around. So, how much of that was planned? Don't know. Bleach Soul says it's also good that Syria acknowledged that they missed the battle of the century when they were on the crossroads. Yeah, I mean, Wolfia definitely said, hey, we need to be somewhere else to help out Aaron, kind of that insight into the Fates path and everything again. But I wondered how much guilt the individual horns might be carrying around for having missed the initial battle and wondering what role they could have potentially played. But it seems, they were pretty vital at the Battle of the Seas, and if they hadn't been there, how much worse would that have gone? All right. So while Mick wraps up this discussion, I'll post the next discussion question, kind of meandering through the chapter here. So there was quite an epic scene that I know I saw quite a bit of discussion on it in the main channel, but there was that duel between Jacana and Pisces, right? Everybody was asking Pisces for a duel, but this was the big one that ended up happening. And we got a little bit more insight into his quote-unquote silver bell. So some speculation here, but are there more mysteries to be uncovered about Pisces' bell besides the ringing for the duelists? And remember, he fought Relt. Relt didn't hear the ringing, but Jacana did. So what does that mean? And we know it's not silver, right? It's something else, potentially of a higher quality or standard. And I don't know. I don't really know why the ringing for her versus the king or maybe other people. Maybe it comes into being totally focused on just the fencing duel at that point, or if it's clouded by other emotions, or if it's not an official challenge. Interested to see your all's thoughts and theories on this. I was wondering if it also could be, I don't know if Pisces made the challenge, or like the hand waving that he did. I think he did that for Jacana and not Relt. So if that makes a difference, potentially somehow invokes the bell. Mafia Hamster says, in one duel, he put his heart into it, the other not. Mystical Pie says, not really sure what the ring means, but they thought that the bell rang after he did the salute. Maybe they misread that. I think you're right. I think the salute might have something to do with it. Bleach Soul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think like the silver bell, it's like a magical bell. It develops with the skills of I mean, like it's probably changed color or somehow have some kind of functionality. The higher level one gets. Yeah, but with regards to Rinning, I think it's more about the like the heart of a duelist. I'm not sure why Rayalt hasn't heard it, but it's probably has to do something with the like duelist or true warrior or something that can hear the bell. Where her father must maybe got consumed with his revenge, so he lost maybe his heart as a duelist. That's why he didn't hear it. So I think it's about that, like the duelist or the warriors or something with like the heart of a duelist that can hear the ring. Yes, that's it.
That's an interesting point. It sort of plays into that mentalities theory, and whether or not you have to be constantly maintaining that kind of mindset for you to be considered a true duelist. Mick says they think the salute is the trigger, but maybe the bell will open up something for the duelist of a walled city that will be something the Drakes would semi-automate by handing out such tokens with these challenges. Good point. I think they're not done with the Drake city that they left. They've got two enemies now that are kind of chasing them around Israel, Bagrams and the pufferfish, whose name I can never remember. But it's it seems like that's going to play into Pisces' character development, and that city eventually is going to kind of pull him back in some way. And carrying around that bell maybe will help him level in the duelist field. I mean, he kind of semi-joked about unlocking a whole new class of fencing that you can level in by being lazy and doing nothing but sleeping in late. So maybe the bell will help him figure out that type of fencing class or fencing school for him to discover. He definitely should talk to Yolan. Maybe if you can combine the Dreamer and the fencing class, that'll sort of help him move along discovering that fencing school. Kinea says maybe the chorus could know something if they end up interacting more with her. It's a good point. Don't know if he'll think to ask, but that would be a good question for her. Kel says what Bleach said would make a lot of sense given that after getting the bells when Pisces finally accepted a duels class, he rediscovered his own love for it and gave up his resentment of his father. Yeah, very, very true. So good points on that. So moving along, there was a kind of a lot that went down with Cult, especially Pisces and Kulth with Relt and Jacana. But before we kind of get into Jacrass in his own section, let's sort of talk about the big one. Sort
Don't
of
forget
the
me.
big what? Oh, sorry, Mafia. Go ahead.
Yeah, just elaborating what I said before about the heart. He was excited to duel. He initiated it. He had a connection with his opponent and made the salute as in excitement. And I think that puts is a very important thing about it, that there maybe has to be a bit of a connection, or not a connection, or a meaning to the duel, and not just two warriors facing off with one another without no. I mean, Pisces was not excited for the duel with the king, like not at all. He didn't even really wanted it, but with the princess, um, those two are connected instantly with each other, and I think that's a big that's important for why one could hear the bell and the other not. There was a connection.
That's a good point. I guess we'll only be able to sort of find out more as we see Pisces maybe duel more people and whether or not the bell comes into play. But I think you guys have all made some really solid points on this, and definitely eager to see more.
Maybe even more princesses.
Well, she's a queen now. She's a queen now,
It's true. It's true. She's a queen.
right? The next step up is an empress or an emperor, I suppose.
Since when is he such a heartbreaker?
Always. I mean, he was the instigator of the whole kissing thing when the mistletoe was going down. If you guys recall.
Only Celis was better than him.
There's a few people that were, and he and Syria were an item for a bit as well. So,
Oh, true. I forgot about that.
Pisces has been a regular heartbreaker. All right, next question. So the other really big scene that occurred with Jacrass is when, Pulth informed Jacana and Rel, hey, you guys, you're rulers, remember that you can actually get rid of classes? Revelation for them. But once they realized, right, Jacana was like, oh, cool, we'll take away that slavery class, which instituted a very private discussion we only got pieces of. So, what were your thoughts about this? Should either of those rulers have been able to take away the slavery class? They didn't, but do you think they should have been able to, based on what we know about them? And because they couldn't, where do you think they'll go from here as characters? Do you think this is kind of the last of Relt and Jacana we're going to see for a while, or do you think that there's some character development here that's going to come about from this experience that they had? Bleach Soul, your thoughts?
I am glad that they could not take his slavery class away. I don't want anybody to take his slavery class away except himself. I want Pisces just to confront his past as I mean the time that he did as a slave. Instead of bottling up, he need to just like he did with his father. He let him go with the duelist. He need to let that go too, like to get over it and move on with his life and not think a lot about slavery and what happened to him. So I think it's great that they couldn't take his class away. As for the king and queen, I think I think they will have like major development where Rayelt gonna step aside and let Jacana rule. it's probably the natural progression of things, and he will go on to just duel and maybe train soldiers and whatnot. But he's gonna, I think, I do believe that he will have this kind of development where she will really be the ruler, and he will just advise her about doing so. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, some interesting insights. I was interested to see how this kind of played out, because I think it really reveals a lot more about their individual characters. You've got Rel, who has quite a bit more, just life experience than Jacana does. And even though she's kind of coming into her own, she's still quite a young ruler. And with Rel, he's aware of how things occur on Chandrar. He's had the experience of traveling to other nations and seeing how things play out there. He said, hey, like, you travel and you recognize by traveling that when you come back to your own country, things aren't necessarily right, like with slavery. But he also pointed out to the serfs in Tiandria, right, and other countries. But he also kind of acknowledges that while these things are wrong, you also run the risk of, right, if you go against these powers, you may not succeed, and it might destroy you, your country, everything. And Jacana's finally faced with this kind of instance where she's like, I would totally do that. But when she's finally faced with the full power of Vishal by trying to break the slavery cross, she can't do it, because one single doubt is enough to just shatter the whole attempt. So I'm really eager to see. I think this will just reinforce how Jacana handles these things. We've already seen that she's asked Pisces to reach out, mention her name to other rulers. She wants to kind of forge this diplomatic path, more open communication lines across Chandrar. And even Rel has mentioned, go travel, go experience, go live. So I kind of see Rel falling into this. He'll stay in the country and rule, while she'll be able to be the ruler abroad, get some more experience, and sort of set up this path for maybe where Jakras is kind of like the between kingdom between otherwise warring nations. But we'll kind of have to see how it plays out. Other thoughts from people? We've got Kel saying, down with Purik. Let Relt be the regent king of Medane under Fedohep, or he will go to Lasor and become the fencing master of the new school. Totally down for that, as long as Purik dies or is beheaded or ends up in a pocket dimension with, the genie being tortured every once in a while. These are all good thoughts and ideas. I like it. Let's do it. Mick says they think it makes sense that they couldn't remove it. The slave lord that claimed him is over level 50. It makes sense that they are locked out. They think it's dangerous the longer he's on Chandra with his class, so they really want him to get it removed quickly. Kanea says Relt may have been able to break it, but he said that it would have alerted them. He did try, and he failed. I think Relt did give it the go, because he wanted to protect his daughter, but he was kind of forcefully confronted with what it meant to make the attempt. How that plays into his character, not sure. I'm actually a little bit disappointed with him being initially reluctant. I mean, from a pragmatic standpoint, it kind of makes sense, but he was the one that pulled his whole country into a war to protect another country, citizens from Floss. He was enslaved, essentially, and tortured by a foreign king. So you would think out of everyone, he would be the one to step up and try and break Pisces slave class more than anyone. But yeah, so interesting to see how that played out. Morton says they think Jacana will feel the consequences of her trying to break the class. The Naga saw her. That's true. Jakras is also potentially now within Rashal's sights. So we'll have to see how this goes. So on that note, one last question with Jacana and Relt, and then we'll move on. Mentioned numerous times throughout the chapter was this apparent divide between the two rulers. So we talked a little bit about it with the last question, but how do you guys feel about this perceived divide between Relt and Jacana as joint rulers? Do you think Jacana is in the right or the wrong for not supporting her father's cause? Do you think Relt is going a little too crazy with his claim for vengeance? We talked a little bit about it, but I just wanted to get any last thoughts in. I think Relt's fully in the right. I think Jacana is playing it a little safe and is too willing to kind of forgive and forget and move on. But, can see arguments for both sides. But man, she's a little too forgiving for someone who was almost kidnapped to forcibly join a harem and literally saw essentially a family member killed before her eyes as her father was dragged across the border in her stead. Like, man, she's she's a little too forgiving in my opinion. Slothy agrees with me. Bleach Soul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I disagree with you. I think just I mean they had like a peace treaty now, so they should be instead of going after like a blind revenge, they should just focus on their people because their people suffered from war. They lost a third of their country, so instead of putting much resources and poke the hornet's nest, they should focus more on giving their citizens better services, improving their lives. We have just as we just know that Jakras is a poor nation, but they still have like lots of resources with regards to like cattle and fruit and whatnot. So they should. So Jakena was in the right when she sends her lowriders to just improve the people's lives, to ask them, hey, what they need and fix stuff. So that's what they need to focus about, and maybe build a stronger military, so they can defend themselves. But other than that, what Rayalt is doing is quite foolish, I think, and it's just driven by a need to revenge on the expense of his people. That's what I think is going on. That's it.
No, I think it's good to have different insights and discussion on this. I don't think Medane's going to leave them alone, and I think that sort of letting the peace treaty stand, gives both nations time to recover, but Rel sort of keeping up the pressure with the raiding kind of keeps them on the defensive, keeps them having to sort of squander resources while letting Jakras rebuild without potentially entertaining, attacks from Nadane, who didn't respect the initial peace treaty in the first place.
It also gives Medane a reason to retaliate and declare full war on them. So
true, but I would sort of say that based on history that Medane would be doing that anyway. But I think you have a good point. I mean, Jakras is suffering from being at war with multiple nations. They've lost some of their key lands to Fedohep. I mean, they definitely need time to recover, and there needs to be a lot more focus on their own citizens. That's for sure. Mick says, I think she isn't forgiving, in reference to Jacana, but focused on recovery and repair. They think her father should be creating and building an army strong enough to overthrow him because every man dead pre-war on his side is a smaller army for a nation that already had their army shrunk drastically. Medane didn't lose as much from Hedahep as Jakras did from Floss. Kel says they think Jacana is more aware of Kelt's waning power, meaning Fedohep's diminished ability to protect Jakras if Relt's actions cause a return to his hostilities, and Relt is too focused on his own revenge. There's absolutely nothing wrong with his anger and desire for revenge, but acting that way as a ruler has a whole lot of additional potential consequences that he's ignoring. Very good point. Morchen says they are both right and wrong at the same time. Jacana should be the face, Relt should be the Shadow King. Interesting. Okay, so sort of new ways for their roles to develop. They definitely need to get on the same page, though, because right now they're almost sort of setting up their country for an internal civil war. I mean, to the fact that they have different knight groups that seem to be arguing with each other, that's not good. So they definitely need to figure out how to rectify this sooner rather than later, unless things, are going to get a whole lot worse for them. So hopefully that won't be the case. But all right, moving on from Jakras, much to my sorrow, but we did have a whole other part of the chapter focused on just the horns. What are your all's takes on the circlet? We talked a little bit about Syria's mentality, but we saw the circlet mentioned a couple different times in a couple different ways this chapter. So, does the circlet have part of its previous owner's personality in it? Is Syria starting to slowly reprogram it? What are your all's thoughts about its impact, if any, on her mentality? As you guys kind of figure out your responses, I'll say that it seems to be definitely threatened. It's definitely responding to Syria's threats. She seems to kind of be in a position to get it to kind of do what she wants. But I don't know. I still, don't still quite know what its impact on her is. If it's negative or positive or kind of neutral in the long term. Kel says threaten object is a great skill. Yeah, I'd love to see how that highly specific skill is used in the future, other than maybe the circlet. But I almost wonder if the circlet is changing Syria permanently in some way. Upping her prankster class, causing her to lose her emotions somehow, maybe even turning her more into, a full elf that's kind of disconnected, right? Which is sort of seems to be the opposite of what she wants. But she's willing to sacrifice almost anything in her goal for power to keep up with her team and protect her team. Bleach Soul, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think at one point we know that Circlet is not cognizant, so it gets afraid when Syria threaten her. But we know that I'm not sure. I have like a theory about it's either two things: either Syria subjugate her fully and remove the curse, so she doesn't have to be without any morals, or she destroys the circuit. But she obtains, the quick thinking and the intelligence that it provides. I think having circulate around Syria without any kind of precautions is highly dangerous and would lead her far away from her teammates. So that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of devastating if it ends up leading her away from the team when her entire objective was to try and keep her team together. But it would be interesting if whatever its objective is, it ends up dragging her away, and the team is sort of forced to abandon whatever else they're pursuing to deal with that and try and get her back. I think it's a good sign that she can take it on and off, and she's been taking it off more often for longer periods. Mick says, "Are you saying her prankster class is taming an object?" Seems to be that way, or potentially the circuit is building up or encouraging her prankster class. But that said, it wasn't exactly pleased with her when she stole a crown. It almost might be that the prankster class is starting to influence her personality as well, separate from the circuit. We know that from the circuit. I mean, we know that different classes can change how their bearers interact and interface with the world. So that's also a concern. One thing that Mick says that they keep suggesting for the circlet is that it may have been made by the same person who made the crown of flowers. And that got some reaction. Interesting theory. If anyone else has any thoughts about that, any kind of insight into sort of where that or what that could influence how the circlet is dealt with or its impact on Syria? So it looks like people agree with the theory, aren't sure where to go with it. So we'll move on from that. So they weren't, the Horns decided that they weren't having enough trouble with one crown, and Syria gave in to intrusive thoughts on her way out of Medain, and Yvonne now bears Medain's crown. What are the ramifications of this? Is this going to be a big impact? Does it not matter? They've got a new bound object that they've got to deal with. Okay, so lots of interest with this question. We'll give people some thoughts. But yeah, so 2 out of 6 members of the Horns now have their own headwear. Yvonne will become the new Queen of Medain, says Bleach Soul. That would be an interesting conundrum to deal with, that Yvonne now has an entire country to terrorize. Kel says, without his crown, Purik is now completely impotent. Hopefully his harem shrinks with him. Or shanks him. Oh, yes. Hopefully he's kind of lost control of the kingdom. Or definitely is out. He's got to be out some of his command powers. I mean, there's subclasses of rulers underneath him. He's High King while he's got kings working for him. The crown must have some sort of power or skills tied up in it. So with that gone, he's got to be losing some of his ability. Morchin says Yvonne for queen. Dart Time Guai says maybe Medain's crown works like Sirius Circlet. And now Peric will suddenly become a righteous person while Yvonne becomes corrupted. That would be an amazing shift in personality. Could be a corrupt crown that he got from a dungeon that totally altered his personality. Mystical Pie says, to be honest, they think Purik would have already gone after them and held a grudge regardless, so they don't really think taking the crown hurts the Horns. Bleachsoul says it would be interesting if Purik loses his High King class. Ark says, best part of the character, or chapter, IMO, Yvonne hands it over to Chicana in like 30 plus chapters to get rid of it. Mick says, all hail the Silver Queen killer Purik. Highly like these theories, highly enjoyable. I'll be interesting to see if it Floss maybe does something with it next chapter, or is this something that they hang on to and pass off to Jakras in a few chapters, which would be great to see. So we've covered kind of a lot of the major sections of the chapter. There was one last meeting that kind of teased what looks like to be a setup of what's going to be going down with the Horns and Chandrar in the upcoming chapter arc with them, which is all of these rulers want something from the Horns. And it seems to be like this is setting them up to hit named rank, which is, Pisces has already promised Chicana that, he'll mention her name. Relt wants their support in killing Medain. Mars is taking them to go see Floss. He'll inevitably have demands. And then Purik mentioned this Zethi's marble that he wanted their help getting. And then the Cross comes along and says, oh, by the way, that marble, I am really interested in that marble. You guys are going to be kind of helping me out with this. So, a couple questions layered into this discussion question. But on the marble, has this mysterious marble something to do with Seamwalker bones? And can Pisces use his new ivory skill on it? But basically, what's up with this marble? Why do so many rulers seem to be kind of gunning for it? Do you think it plays into the Kemoth marble? My mistakes, Cal. Thank you. And how do you think it kind of plays into this larger thing that's going down within Chandrar? And then as part of that, what do you guys think about the rulers' causes? Do you think the Horns should be siding with certain rulers? Or should they be just trying to get in, deal with the initial issues, and get out and go rescue their other teammates? As you guys contemplate that, last couple wrap-up comments from the last discussion question. Dart Time Guai says Yvonne still needs to buy souvenirs for Mishra. Maybe she'll just, hand it over. Hey, there's something new. Mishra, all queen, hail the queen of Medain. She needed a new class. Might as well add queen of a country to it. Kel says, give it to Fedohep to bestow something upon him, to bestow upon someone else like Relt. Great idea. Bleach Soul says, Clavian Earth wanted to send messages to the other leaders. And then Bleach Soul says, in response to the new discussion question, it's a magical stone. The Horn should stay away from political affairs. think they should go all in. Pick up their causes, go crazy. We already know they're going to be against Rochelle. They should just go ahead and start taking sides, start taking quests. That's the next step. They didn't have many plans outside of to continue advancing. So, get fully involved with Chandrar's politics and insanity. Might as well. Make some allies, make some enemies. They needed to take their mess to a new continent, so why not, head back to the one that they landed on and got a whole bunch of problems for. They're pretty much done with Israel for now. There's no way they're making it further into the new lands. Mick says they think if they're going to drag them into Chandra politics, Pisces might as well get on the ship and Chicana. Yes, new ship. Let's do it. There was definitely some flirting going on there. Kel says they had no idea Seamwalker Bones was a theory for the marble, but that's both fascinating and terrifying. If it is, it would be worth Pisces getting some of it and the chorus telling them that's what it might be, what gets them to go. Because otherwise they should keep out of it. I wonder if the new country mining the marble is the one led by that crazy czar, Hercules, whatever his name was, the one that ran off and started his own nation. He would be in the know for where older seams are. Or what? Okay, it was Empire of Sands. So Kel says they thought it was Empire of Sands. Mystical Pie says it was Empire Sands. Fair enough, Empire Sands. Bleachel says maybe the marble is as magical as Seathbone. Good points. Mick says, oh my god, they can't be sending them to deal with that guy. They would get nuked. I mean, come on, guys. Like, the threat of their heads being cut off to be used as part of the Empire's head retinue, you have to imagine that they could just destabilize that entire nation. And at least we would finally get to learn more about Empire Sands. It's been on the back burner since I think like Volume 2.
I think Mick is talking about Hekraloon, the Vizier.
Oh, fair enough.
And in that case, they need to go collect Enuryn first, because she's got all the Celt knowledge that could shut him down. Just by sheer embarrassment, probably.
That is true. But they would have to get over to Balaros to do that.
And that's why I think they shouldn't get involved with the mine stuff, if at all possible, because they have teammates and an innkeeper and other people to go rescue. Although I think at this rate, it's going to end up being Enuryn collecting her people on Balaros and then going to Chanchar and rescuing the Warrens this time.
I don't think they have much of a choice. I think the chorus has placed them in a position where they're going to get sucked in, and it's going to be Vofia and Kissimer heading over there to meet them rather than the other way around. And I don't know what Aaron's going to do, but
she's looking for all her friends, and they're all together. So
yeah,
she's going to go collect them because they have no way of finding her. And then they're all going to go to Chandrar, and instead of Pisces thinking they need to go save Enuryn is going to show up this time and save their asses.
True. I mean, this kind of begs the question of what is the new overarching plot that's going to be addressed in Volume 10. And it seems like it's Rochelle. Rochelle seems to be the setup for that. It's been teased for a while. My guess is that everybody's going to end up over in Chandrar to deal with that.
Fuck Rochelle.
Yes. Morchan says, what if Norhavia's crossed out Fallen second rising mines the marble? Like there's a lot of people that have interest in Chandrar. This feels like the next section. It feels like this is where everybody's headed, but we've got some characters over in Balaros that need to get their asses over to Chandrar. And, what better than the Horns getting captured, threatened, causing chaos, then, pulling Ryoka, pulling Enuryn, pulling everybody over, pulling the princess, right? We saw that Vofia and Kisimfer are with Seraphil and all of her knights and guardians. So
and
hey,
Rabbit and Bad Arrow and yeah.
Yep. So, take the whole kit and caboodle. over to the desert, the desert, and deal with a major power on the planet. All right, so that kind of wraps us up in terms of discussion. We got some cool things that seem to be coming into play. We got finally a look at Relt and Jacana and Jakras and how they're doing. We got to finally see how 4 of the Horns are handling things. 5, if you count the Circlet as part of their little team. And, we finally got to see 2 of the others and who they're shipwrecked with at the moment. So that wraps up our discussion. I'll go ahead and end the recording. Thanks for joining us today, guys.